This is Chick2Chick Uncut, raw and unfiltered.
Unless you've been living under a rock, you have probably seen that kiss cam footage. It quickly went viral and spread across the world. You know what I'm talking about. The CEO of a company caught on camera cuddling a colleague at a Coldplay concert. The problem, these two, they're married to other people. That video was probably only about 10 seconds, but it caused a world of damage. Both of them resigned from the company, so it ruined their careers, destroyed their families, and really, it begs the question, why do people cheat? Why do they engage in this type of behavior and risk losing everything? That brings us to our guest today. Amanda Levison is a licensed professional counselor at Neurofeedback and Counseling Center of Central Pennsylvania. Amanda, I know you saw that video. What did you think when you saw it?
I sure did. You know, my heart went out to their spouses and their children, the rest of their family. Just that something so personal can be exposed through the whole country, world, however far it went. And once it's on the internet, you know, you can't erase it.
I just cannot imagine the humiliation that everybody involved felt. I mean, it was so public. It was so out there. I'm sure they didn't think they were going to get caught, and to get caught in such a public way. You know, we want to tackle in this podcast, why do people cheat? But before we get to that, I think we need to understand what is cheating. You know, I think people go, okay, what's cheating? It usually involves something sexual, some sort of physical, intimate contact. Does cheating also always have to be physical like that? What is cheating?
So cheating would be any form of infidelity that would be emotional or it could be sexual. Many people have emotional affairs where maybe there's nothing to do physically, but just having that connection that is inappropriate and feels unfaithful towards their relationship.
So it doesn't have to be physical, right? It can be emotional as well.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, Amanda, why do people cheat? Why do they cheat?
So it's a really good question. And I don't think there's like a one answer for everybody. But ultimately, it's that their needs are not getting met and that they're seeking some validation or their needs elsewhere.
So if we were to break this down, when you say their needs are not being met, and let's talk about in the relationship, what kind of needs are we talking about?
So sometimes, so I want to start by saying men's needs and women's needs, overall, we could say they are different, but some men are more sensitive towards things and vice versa. So it could be that their emotional needs are not met. They don't feel secure. They don't feel safe in the relationship. And safety doesn't necessarily mean like physical safety. It could be emotional safety as well. And their needs overall are not being met, whether it could be from the physical capacity or more, just even a companionship or someone as a confidant.
How important is communication when you're talking about that? And when you say their needs are not being met?
Yeah, so communication is like, ultimately, I think it's like the most pivotal thing in any relationship. A lot of times people will say like, I didn't lie, when they're not like forthcoming, right? So like, I didn't tell you I did X, Y, Z, or I didn't tell you about whatever, but I wasn't lying. I just wasn't telling you, right? And so ultimately it feels like a sense of betrayal. So it's important that there is that communication, regardless of what it is, whether it's something that you're doing that's habitual, that's bothering someone, or ways to make things more fluid in the relationship.
When you talk about, again, our needs are not being met, I think a big thing with men, their sexual needs, right? Yeah. So how do you work that out? Because as we age, needs change sexually, right? For men and for women.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
So let's talk about sex. It's a great song, too.
Let's talk about sex, Amanda.
So everyone loves talking about sex. And the thing about sex is, one, you have to be open about it in order to have a positive sex life. And you, in the sense of even just communicating about it. The other component about sex is, as we age, typically, one spouse, their sex drive may go up and the other spouse, their sex drive may go down. And as your needs are not getting met, it also pushes away the intimacy part, both emotional and physical. So for instance, women need the emotional intimacy to be physical, and men typically need the physical need being met to be emotional. So we're in this seesaw of, well, I need this, but you need this. So how do we find that balance within this relationship? So that's where the important component is sometimes it's working on being a little bit more emotionally giving or being a little bit more sexually giving to find that balance that would work for a couple. When they are not getting that, it really creates more of a divide between them.
And so the guy goes and seeks to have his needs fulfilled elsewhere. They cheat.
It could happen. Yeah. And it's not that every guy whose needs are not being met goes and cheats, right? So let's kind of clear that part. But many can find that if someone else is forthcoming with that, they may say, well, this is convenient or this is comfortable. And if I'm not getting it somewhere, I'm going to go somewhere else.
What about boredom? Let's be honest here. Life gets boring, right? We're stuck in this rat race. We're stuck in this routine. It's like you're a gerbil on the treadmill. Life gets boring. Do you also get bored with your partner and you're looking for a little excitement?
I think that, boredom, it looks very interesting for everyone. Some people get bored easily. Some people don't get bored easily. When things get boring, typically it's, well, what do we do to spice things up? We could go on a date. We could play games. We could, not just sit on our phones and watch TV at night, but how do we change things up? Ultimately, it's a choice whether you're committed to your relationship or not. And it's also a choice to invest in your relationship or not.
What about the individual? We talked about needs within the relationship. How is cheating related to somebody and perhaps maybe their self-esteem? Maybe there's more to it than just what they're not getting or not getting within the relationship. The person, the individual, what's up with that?
Yeah. So a lot of times when people have poor self-esteem, they are looking for external factors to feed that, to make them feel more secure and safe, right? So, oh, you look so pretty today, or, oh, I love your outfit. Typically women are more naturally complimentary to their friends, just as a natural kind of come and go. It's a connection, and women can typically notice it, where when men give those compliments, it might feel more sexualized, like, what does he want? Why is he complimenting me, right? So it looks a little bit different with that. But I think that it comes down to the therapeutic component in the sense of your personality, the way you form your perspective, your point of view in life is from your childhood and your own experiences. So what you are learning as a child is now going to influence how your perspective is as an adult. So if you are feeling insecure, if you have not had validation, it's a constant need to seek that validation. The other component when we talk about childhood is what kind of role models did you have? Were your parents showing a committed relationship? Or if they're single, were they showing, emotional, physical, romantic responsibilities? Or was there constant influx of dating happening in the house? Or was there a lack of trust in the house? Or, there's many things that could influence our own perspectives that when we're older, influence like our dedication to a relationship, especially within a marriage or a long-term relationship, what that looks like.
So what you see as a child, you're going to mimic in your marriage then? If you see that lack of attention and you see, the father or the mother cheating, you're going to mimic that from this childhood trauma that you've gone through?
It increases the possibility because, your parents are teaching you right from wrong at a very young age. And it's showing you that it's okay. And when you think of like criminal behaviors, a lot of times that could be a generational thing. Now, there's always going to be the outlier. I don't want to behave like that. I don't want to act like that. So I'm going to do the opposite. But traditionally, it shows that it is a habitual thing that is generationally taught.
It's
a hard
taught.
word.
It's learned behavior. I got it. I got it. That was a big word.
Yeah.
I got it. I had this conversation recently with a male friend of mine, and he said to me, you know what? When men go out and they cheat, you just got to understand, like, men need variety. We need variety in our lives. It's just biological. It doesn't mean that we don't love our spouses. It doesn't mean we don't love our wives. It's just the way men are wired. I wanted to punch him. I mean, is that really the way men are? Are we supposed to accept that? And then I said to him, well, what if women did that and we needed variety? He's like, oh, no. Like, is that something? Is this a real thing that men just need variety?
No. And again, that comes back to like what happened in this person's childhood to kind of have that perspective. If you need such a variety, it's important that you look into your own relationship and you could spice it up, right? There could always be a variety among your own relationship to make it safe and secure.
So I also wondered about this. Do some couples go out and cheat maybe as a form of revenge? You know, maybe their spouse did something to them and they're like, I'm going to get you back. I'm going to go out and cheat on you. Does that happen?
I wouldn't put it past anyone, you know, and I say that because there's an emotional maturity that happens in relationships. And when someone doesn't have that emotional maturity, it can create this imbalance and a power struggle. So, yeah, it's possible. Is it the reason most of the time? I would doubt that.
Are there situational reasons why people cheat? And when I say situational reasons, there's temptation all around us. And you go into work and you're close with your work spouse, you know, things happen.
Yes and no, right? So we create our own boundaries. If you are committed to your relationship, it doesn't matter how much someone's dangling that carrot in front of you, you would shut it down. And if you realize that like your work spouse has like a relationship with you or something is forming or something feels a little bit uncomfortable where you wouldn't want to share it with your spouse of what's occurring, then that also means that maybe you need to change your role, your job, your situation of who you're reporting to or who, you know, if you're on a team, maybe changing a team. But you're choosing to be putting yourself in that scenario. And while you might not have realized it was occurring, if you have firm boundaries, nothing would get past the friendly work professional environment.
What about stress? What about major life events? Something catastrophic happens within a family. For instance, maybe a child dies. Does that lead to cheating as well?
Not necessarily. Again, it's all about how committed are you to the relationship and who are you confiding in. So something that could be so horrific that would happen in someone's life, like woman to woman, you could have a girlfriend who is a friend as a support system. You could have a family member who's a support system. But choosing whether, if you're gay, straight, whoever it is, whoever you're attracted to, if you're choosing to confide in someone while you're in a relationship of, your choice. So for instance, as a heterosexual woman, if I was choosing to confide in a man, and if I couldn't tell my spouse that, then that is already crossing that line, so you're choosing to cross that line by allowing those behaviors to occur. It doesn't matter what you're experiencing, there's boundaries. And if you're not firm on your boundaries, opportunities can come that are not always in the best interest of you or your family.
Well, and what you're talking about too is you're starting to get intimate when you're confiding in somebody else. You're starting to make that connection that could then lead to something else and put you in a bad situation.
100%.
So here's the $1 million question. And this really bothers me. If you're not happy and your needs are not being met and all of these other factors are coming into play here, why don't you just leave? Instead of cheating on your spouse, instead of cheating on your partner, Why don't you just leave the relationship and say, this is not working for me? Why do they do that to the other person?
I think that is a great question, and it's a loaded question. I think it's easier said than done. And a lot of times people feel pressure in many different ways of maybe where they feel almost like, I can't leave this relationship. It could be financial situations. It could be whether it's like children involved. There's many factors of where someone may feel just stuck and they don't know how to unstuck, essentially, to get out, to find the relief. Or they may feel that it may be so much worse if they were to exit the relationship.
So instead of leaving, they betray the other person who they're supposed to love. Is that what you're telling me?
I mean, crazier things have happened, but it's that, again, these are all choices. So, we're taught as little children that there's always a consequence for our action, and some consequences are good and some consequences are bad. And in the sense of cheating, obviously there's going to be a lot of bad consequences that kind of snowball.
Okay, so this going back to this conversation that I recently had with a male friend, this also gets me, and maybe it's the difference between the male brain and the female brain. He said, men can love their wives, men can love their partner, men can love whoever they're with and still go out and cheat. And that means nothing to them. And my response is, if you love that person, how can you do that and hurt them? Is that the difference between the male brain and the female brain and how they view cheating?
I wouldn't really go there. I think that a lot of times we define love differently. So how we love our children looks different than our parents, our spouse, our friends, etc. So when you take teenagers and they see their friends and they're like, oh my God, I love her. And it's like, well, you just met her. There's a very quick connection that they say they love each other. And as we grow up, our bubble of love kind of shrinks, but it also extends in the sense that our circle of the people we love might have gotten smaller, but our love has grown so much more. Right. And so sometimes people feel like I really have positive regard for this person. I truly care about them and I want the best for them. But the love part can be limited. Right. So it's really defining what is love. And also, if you truly, truly love someone, you would make sure you're protecting them. And cheating on someone is not protecting them. So it's a very selfish act. But it also sounds like that thing that we were just saying about consequences. If someone has that perspective, they're really not thinking of the consequences of their actions. They're just in the moment to fulfill their own needs, which is pretty selfish.
It is very selfish, very, very selfish. You keep saying this is a choice, and it is. Infidelity is a choice. Cheating is a choice. And there are ramifications and consequences. What impact can this have on the kids when they find out that a mom or a father, is cheating? How does this affect the kids?
So it makes them question their own security. And it also puts like a sense of like loyalty is gone, their trust is gone. So even growing up, they have mistrust in other people. They may really struggle in their own relationships. A lot of times, when we grow up as children, we could see something and we could see it from different perspectives. So it doesn't mean that every child who experiences witnessing their parents having an affair or hears about an affair has difficulties in relationships. But there is a strong percentage that their perception has been changed. And so they just view relationships differently because our parents ultimately are teaching us right from wrong. And if on the moral and ethical perspective, your parents are doing the wrong, and that's okay. Well, if my mom or dad could do it, why can't I do it? How is that any different?
So there's a high percentage then of children who witness or live through infidelity who are then going to do it themselves as adults because they view it and they saw it and it's learned behavior. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily that they would cheat, but they're going to have more of a struggle within relationships. So they may struggle being in a committed relationship, or they may struggle even just getting to a serious relationship, or they may, be in a relationship and when things get tough, even if they're not cheating, rather than working through those issues, they may be more apt to just escape to not create pain. Relationships are hard. The divorce rate is over 50%.
Yep.
So it's important to really look at what is taught and how do we teach our children healthy dynamics within a relationship, even if you are making bad choices in a situation like, the couple with Coldplay. How can you teach your children safety and loyalty
when you're not protecting them?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about the extended family? What's the fallout for them? Because I don't think this stops within the confines of the home. I think it branches out and there is fallout that hits in-laws, aunts and uncles. How does this affect them?
So it really depends on the relationships. First off, not every spouse likes their in-laws, whether extended family or anything like that. So if they are very close, they may still say, you're going through a difficult time and we're here to support you both in this, endeavor, whatever it may look like. Or they may say, I hate that other person. I want nothing to do with them. Once kids are involved, so like let's say it's the grandparents, an aunt and uncle, things do look different because there are going to be birthday parties, special events that they are going to have to see each other. So they may just kind of keep the peace for those events. It looks different for everyone, but ultimately your family is going to be more committed to you, whether you made good choices or bad choices. So that most likely they're going to be supportive of it. It just may be embarrassing in the sense of this Coldplay couple, that it was so publicized. Mm-hmm. Typical, affairs are humiliating. So this, yeah. But on the other hand, it's important to realize that the wife and the husband and their families and extended didn't do anything wrong. Even if they were terrible spouses, I have no idea. I'm not saying that they were, but even if they were, it doesn't justify having an affair.
Agreed. So in your experience, when you're dealing with couples, and there's been cheating involved and, infidelity, do they usually split up? Do most of them split up, or do they work it out and stay together? What's your experience with this?
I don't have a percentage of what ends up happening with couples, but I think that some do get through this and some do split up. It's a decision, again, just like it's a decision to cheat or stay faithful, it's a decision to decide, are we going to work through this or are we going to split up? And what does that look like for our future? So if you are going to stay together, it's important that you set clear boundaries and that you work on building the trust, that you work on building a friendship, and ultimately the emotional intimacy. And once all those things align over time, possibly the physical intimacy is going to improve as well. But it's showing a constant commitment to the relationship.
How do you rebuild that trust? I think I would really, really have a difficult time with that. Give us some pointers on how you can do that. So trust is a difficult thing, as we all define trust differently. So oversharing is very helpful. And it doesn't mean I had cake and ice cream and, whatever throughout the day, but it's being accountable to your time. It's being accountable with your communication. So for instance, if you had to go to the grocery store and then you realize you have to stop and get gas, but you said, I'm going to the grocery store and then I'll be home, and now it's longer, by not sharing that you got gas and you took an extra 15 minutes per se, it creates a feeling of where are they, and like an insecure feeling. So by saying, hey, honey, I want to let you know I got all the groceries, but now I need to stop for gas. It'll be another 10, 15 minutes. I'll be home after. That shows that I'm being accountable for my time and I care to make sure that you feel secure of my whereabouts. It may feel almost like a teenager checking in with their parent for a little bit. But on the other hand, how else are you going to show your accountability to your spouse with your time, with your actions? If you're texting someone, oh, it's so funny, so-and-so is texting me. By sharing those things, you're showing that you're not hiding anything. And that's key. That's key. You got to make sure you get through all of that. How do you get back to the point of intimacy? I think that would be very tough too.
Yeah. So it depends if you're talking about emotional intimacy or physical intimacy. But if you are talking about physical intimacy, which I would assume.
Yes. Let's talk about sex, Amanda.
Exactly. I think that building that trust and that safety, showing an interest in each other, invested time, it will naturally happen. And also it's about not harboring onto resentments because you're choosing to stay in the relationship. It is not fair to sit there and hold a resentment towards someone because of that. You could hold on to the pain and express your pain when it's appropriate, and your feelings are all valid. But you're choosing to, although we've gone through this, I'm choosing to move forward with you. If you're choosing to move forward, you have to truly and authentically move forward. And all those things will align if you are truly committed to working on the relationship.
And at some point, do you need to kind of let it go and not talk about it anymore and not bring it up and rehash what happened? Do you have to just sort of put it in a box and say, okay, there was infidelity. We're working to get past this. We're going to look to the future.
Yes and no. So yes, don't bring it up as a constant thing. Every time you're mad at the person, don't say, well, this is why you did X, Y, Z, or, whatever that looks like. But it's important to validate the pain. And also, it's important to take your own ownership. And I don't say it's not your fault if someone cheats on you. However, it is your fault if you were not investing in your relationship. So it's important to recognize that both of you may be hurt in the scenario, even if one acted more inappropriately. So that person may have some more repairing to do within the relationship. But it's also important to say, I had a role too of where the relationship did not progress or succeed. So now I have a role to repair that as well.
Yeah. I am not a fan of cheating. I'm a big advocate of, who is. Yeah. I'm not a fan of it. And I just feel like, you said before, it's because they feel like their needs aren't being met. Why don't you just tell your partner what you need instead of going out and doing this? Why don't you just speak up?
That would be amazing, right? I wouldn't have a job if everyone had effective communication. But people don't have effective communication. That's also where therapists can help a couple to navigate how to move forward, to communicate their needs, or to help them feel secure and safe in an environment where it may not lead to a fight. Some people struggle like, oh, if I share my feelings, if something bothers me, we always end up in a fight and it's terrible. So that's where, again, a therapist can kind of help you guide through those steps and the motions of it. Or maybe you don't even know how to communicate. Maybe your parents never taught you, your role models never taught you how to communicate. And that's important to look at too and acknowledge, like, I never learned how to fight appropriately, right? So how we fight looks different for everyone. So those types of things can help you. But again, it's all about your commitment to your relationship.
Yeah, you got to speak up if something's not right, if your needs aren't being met. And, you might get caught. And you might get caught in a really big way, like that couple did at the concert. And boy, that is humiliating. It's just, I just can't imagine what anybody in that situation, how they're feeling, how terrible that is. And again, to your point, this is a choice.
Yeah.
People are making the choice to do this. So as we wrap up this podcast on why people cheat, Amanda, give us some closing thoughts here.
Ultimately, it's your choice to be in your relationship. You chose to get into it. You choose to work through things. The other part is when people are cheating, their needs aren't being met. So it's so important to communicate that when your needs are not being met, what do I need? And not just saying my needs aren't being met. That's very vague. Yep. But let's be specific. If it's, I need to be able to talk to you in a safe space. I need you to feel like I need to be heard. I need to feel accepted. That looks a lot different than I can't talk to you, right? So it's important to communicate in an effective way of how you can get your needs met. And when things are bad, reach out for help, reach out for support, but don't do it with someone that you're attracted to because that's just leading to danger.
Yeah, that is a recipe for disaster. And I think this was a great way to end this podcast. Amanda, thanks so much for coming on the podcast and explain to us why people cheat. Thank you. And thank you for watching and for listening and for tuning in today. As always, do me a favor, head over to our YouTube channel, Chick2Chick USA, like and subscribe. That way, every time we come out with a new podcast episode, you're going to get an alert on your phone. Again, thanks for tuning in. Have a great day, and we will be back soon with a new podcast episode.